Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are breaking down one last college basketball slate before the madness begins. That's right, tomorrow is Selection Sunday. I say this as I'm recording on Saturday night. And so we have got 4 more conference championship games to be played. DraftKings has a nice little 4-game slate for us. We are going to break down each of those 4 games in this episode, tell you what you can expect from each game, as well as who needs to be in or out of your DFS lineups, or what to consider for some stats, for some player props, or some bets. Now, I do want to go ahead and square this away. So our schedule for next week is going to be jam-packed, right? Because March Madness is finally here. So tomorrow night, Sunday night, we are going to be recording the golf show for the Valspar Championship. We're going to be getting that in a day early. We are also likely, this is the goal, going to be going live and doing some underdog college basketball best ball drafts. If you are not familiar with this format, we released a strategy video a few weeks back. Check that out on the channel feed. We also did another live stream where we did 2 drafts last week. So check that out if you are interested. They're a blast. It's a fun format. I'm really looking forward to drafting. Once we know a bracket, I think the strategy will be a little bit different. And I'm curious to see if the ADPs or any kind of the player takes kind of end up changing once we actually have a bracket. Now, Monday night, we're going to be doing our yearly bracket breakdown show. That is one of my favorites to record year in and year out. Make sure you are tuned into that. And then hopefully the goal, if DraftKings and FanDuel cooperate with us, is for Tuesday and Wednesday night to be recording for the DFS slates for Thursday and Friday, a full day in advance. That is the goal. Might happen, might not, depending on how DraftKings and FanDuel do their thing. But we're going to be having plenty of content for you for the first week of March Madness. Cannot wait. Super excited for it. It's 2 of my favorite days of the sports calendar. And I hope you guys are as excited for it as I am. And if you are not already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That we can be with us here for all of that. And through the rest of college basketball season, we're closing in on 1,000 subscribers, and the goal is to hit 1,000 before the season ends. I can only get there with you guys' help, so help me out. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. All right, so now that we've got the calendar for next week squared away, we got one last slate here in front of us. So let's go ahead and break it down, and we'll go ahead and get to it. All right, so game number 1 on the slate is going to be between Tennessee and Florida in the SEC championship game. And I got to say, this one's kind of interesting. Like, I really didn't figure that this was going to be the matchup. I am a believer in this Florida Gators team, but as a whole, I didn't think that Tennessee was going to get there. I kind of thought Auburn was going to bounce back, but this should provide us with a good game. These top 4 teams in the SEC, they're all really good. They're all really competitive. Now, this one, KenPom has projected to be 73-70. That is a total of 143 points. These 2 teams split the season series, and it's really hard to kind of glean any kind of information off of them. Florida won the first meeting 73-43. They just drubbed them. And then Tennessee won the second meeting 64-44. That was the legendary Jordan Gainey game where Zakai Ziegler was out and Tennessee kind of played one of their best games of the season out of nowhere. Just really weird stuff in that game. So let's kind of look at the season-long numbers. I'm not going to really factor in too much into those 2 outcomes. Tennessee ranks 346th in the nation in tempo and first in defensive efficiency. That makes them literally one of the worst matchups for scoring fantasy points ever. Like, they're one of the 20 slowest teams in the nation, and they're the best defensive team in the nation. Not a whole lot of fantasy points get scored against them in general. The one thing is with Tennessee is that they do force a lot of 3-point shots. They generally pack the paint pretty well. So if you do get hot from behind the arc against them, you can have a pretty good game. Florida, on the other hand, ranks 62nd in the nation in tempo. Couldn't read my own notes there. And 7th in defensive efficiency. They are a great offensive rebounding team, and they are a great, just all field goal defensive team. So you've got 2 really good defenses here in this one. I kind of would lean the under if I were a betting man on the total in this one. What I do like about this from a fantasy perspective is that everybody seems to be priced down. At least the star players seem to be priced down. With Tennessee, I got to be honest, there's only 3 players that I'm considering. It's Zakai Ziegler, Chaz Lanier, and Igor Milicic. Couldn't think of his name for a second there. So Zakai Ziegler is Tennessee's point guard. He's going to play nearly every minute of the game as long as he is not in foul trouble. And he's a guy who puts up a ton of peripheral stats. With Florida, as good of a defense as they are, as much as they push the tempo, that bodes well for peripheral stat guys like Zakai Ziegler. And now that he's priced down at $7,800, he's hit 4x value in 3 of the last 4 games. You know, he has a 33, a 34, and a 41 on the books. That's pretty solid. And you know he's going to be out there for a ton of minutes. You know that everything in their offense runs through him. He's a good foul shooter. He's a good peripheral stat guy. Like, he checks off a lot of boxes now that he's at that low price tag for this matchup against Florida. Chaz Lanier, I don't play as much as Ziegler because he is much more scoring dependent than Ziegler. He is a better scorer. He's a much better shooter. He takes more shots, but he doesn't put up the peripheral stats as Ziegler does. And so really, to me, that kind of lowers his ceiling and kind of his floor, where I think Ziegler is just overall a better play than Lanier. But I do think I'm still going to get to him because at $7,500, if he gets hot from behind the arc, like, he could absolutely give you a really, really good performance. He's probably still going to make my player pool, but I'm much more prone to playing Ziegler. Igor Milicic is the third guy that I'll play. So he dealt with foul trouble against Auburn today, like, big time shocker there, right? He was guarding Janai Broome. So of course he's going to get in foul trouble. But prior to that, he had been really good. He had a really good game against Texas. This is a guy who can give you shot blocking upside, who can get a lot of rebounds if he's able to stay out on the floor. At $6,000, I like him as a play. To me, the other guys on Tennessee are just overpriced. Like Meshack and Okpara are the other two starters. They are like virtual non-factors offensively, just kind of rebound and defensive type of players. And then Jordan Gainey's the first guy off the bench. To me, if you're playing a GPP and you want to try Gainey, like, I think that's a viable strategy because that would likely mean that Ziegler or Lanier would be in foul trouble if Gainey was succeeding. But the problem is Gainey's all the way up here at $5,900. It just doesn't seem like a very financially wise decision to make that play. So let's go ahead and talk about the Florida side. So for Florida, Walter Clayton Jr. is their guy. And for some reason, he got a $1,000 price drop. He's down to $8,200. I love that because, like, Tennessee's an awful matchup for them, right? Like in the two games against Tennessee, Walter Clayton Jr. has a 14 on the books and a 22 on the books. It's not good. But he's been great recently. His usage rate has been trending upwards. He's a big-time peripheral stat guy. Like, I really do think $8,200, I think the price is right to go back to Walter Clayton here on this slate. Alex Condon is a guy that has been a core play for me each of the last 2 days, and in both of them, he has disappointed. But both of them have been kind of weird games, right? Like the Missouri game, he gets in the first half foul trouble. It just never really is in the flow of the game. The Bama game, he is just kind of a total NPC offensively in the first half, and then the game turns into a blowout and he doesn't play much of the second half. So I think we could be in line for a full Alex Condon game as long as he can stay out of foul trouble. And I am going to buy the bounce back, whereas I think a lot of people are going to go away from him because of the matchup and because of the last two games. Condon does have the potential to break a slate. We saw it in the two games before the SEC tournament, 43 and 47 fantasy points in those. If he does that, you're going to be a really happy camper. So I'm absolutely going to go back to Alex Condon here on this one. Elijah Martin has kind of also been a dud in the SEC tournament, but kind of like I said, it's been two weird games for Florida. And Martin was another guy that was in foul trouble against Missouri in the first half. So I am kind of more prone, looking at the recent trends in usage, to not play Martin and just pay up and play Walter Clayton Jr. But Martin is a guy that can give you a lot of points out of nowhere. But really, if you look at his recent game log, he's objectively overpriced for what he has been doing, right? Like, he's $6,900 on DraftKings. So you really want 28 DraftKings points, right? And so in the last 10 games, he only has 129 that would be 4x value. That's not good. That's not a good percentage. We want at least 4x value. If you want to win in GPP, you want 5x value. And he's not giving you that for that salary. So he might be a fade for me on this slate. Will Richard's a guy that I will go back to. He is a microwave shooter for this Florida team. And Tennessee's a team that's going to force Florida to take a lot of 3-point shots. So I'm kind of buying him for that. And again, he's another guy kind of like Condon today against Alabama. He was a victim of the blowout in the second half, didn't play a lot of the second half. So if he does get a full minute load, he does get his normal touches and normal shots up. I do think Richard's a solid play at 6,200. Now, the other bigs for Florida after Condon, to me, are much more volatile. Like Huff, like, you're just not getting more than 25 minutes out of him recently. The only game where he did eclipse that mark was Missouri for 27 when Condon was in foul trouble. So to me, he would be kind of like a GPP type of play if you want to kind of get leverage on Condon. But I don't think enough people are going to be playing Condon that you really need to worry about that. And then Chinyelu is the other starting big, and he's just super boomer bust. He's another guy that's not going to play a ton of minutes. He hasn't played more than 20 minutes in the last 6 games. And in terms of DraftKings points, yeah, there's some good totals on here, but there's also some bad ones. You just don't really know how it's going to go with him. At $4,800, if you want to take that chance, you can. I probably won't. And then Micah Henlogton has really only seen run in blowouts of these last 2 games. So I'm kind of out on him for the time being because I don't expect this game to be a blowout. Game number 2, we've got George Mason taking on VCU for the Atlantic 10 Championship, the 1 seed versus the 2 seed in this conference tournament. Ken Pom has this one projected to be 67-61 in favor of VCU. That's a low total. It's 128 points. That's pretty bad, y'all. And when you look at the previous meeting, it was 70-54 VCU on their home court. Yeah, bad. 124 total points. Both these teams will lock you up defensively, and both these teams are not in a hurry to do anything offensively. So you're probably not going to get a lot of scoring in this one. However, the pricing of some of the plays does make them kind of like options. In that previous meeting, Max Shulga led the entire game with 36.8 DraftKings points. So, somebody can still give you a decent total if the game is a low total, especially on a small slate like this. Now, from a statistical perspective, George Mason ranks 318th in tempo and 23rd in defensive efficiency. They're a very good defensive team. They're a very poor offensive team. They have a very high turnover rate offensively, but they're a great field goal defensive team. Like, generally speaking, just because a shot goes up against them does not mean it's going in. On the VCU side, they rank 242nd in tempo and 21st in defensive efficiency. They are a great offensive rebounding team. They are great at forcing turnovers, and they are also a great field goal defense. So what's interesting is you do have strength against weakness here, where VCU is really good at forcing turnovers, and George Mason really gives it up. So you could see some high steal totals from some of these VCU guys. Now, on the George Mason side, we got to talk about the hero of Saturday, and that was Jamal Haynes. He was just great in the game against St. Joe's, 41 DraftKings points in that game. So what's interesting with Haynes is that he has been their primary big all season long, but the minute totals have just been super fluctuating. Well, recently, especially now that we're in the conference tournament, he's playing the whole game. And so if he's playing the whole game, he's going to put up a lot of DraftKings points. I do think that this VCU team is still a little bit weak in the interior. Like, both of their bigs are good shot blockers, but I don't think they're good individual defenders. Like, I've watched enough of this VCU team to think that you can kind of have them if you have a good post-up big. And Jalen Haynes is a guy who can really hurt you in a lot of ways as a forward. So I really do like him at $7,400. I don't think that's an overprice, and I do think that's a price that he can get to, even though this game environment is quite dreadful. Maddox, on the other hand, I think he's like a high floor cash game option. He is their highest usage guard among the starters. I don't mind him at $6,300, but he's not my favorite play on the slate. O'Connor had kind of a lackluster performance against St. Joe's, but he's another guard that he's kind of their shooter. He could get hot from behind the arc at any time. He's not my favorite play at 5,500, though. I do like Woody Newton. He is not a high usage player. He's not a high shot guy, but he's a really good rebounder, really good defender who kind of plays the small ball four for this team. He's going to play a ton of minutes. And so if you're giving me a guy that's going to play a ton of minutes, like at $5,000, I'm kind of going to play that. So I don't mind him at $5,000. Jared Billups is the guy that I'm not going to chase. Like, against George Washington, he had 5 steals and a block and put up 39 DraftKings points. It was his highest total of the season. Against St. Joe's, he plays nearly the same minutes total, gets 3 steals again, puts up 19 DraftKings points. Yeah, I'm not going to continue chasing that because I just don't think that with that little offensive production that he's had from a scoring perspective all season long, I don't think that you can continue to rely on steals as a source of DraftKings points. So he's going to be an easy fade for me, and I'm hoping that the field is going to chase him. Now, KD Johnson is a guy that I do like. So KD Johnson, first off, he's kind of a psychopath. He's kind of like J.R. Smith meets I Show Speed, the YouTuber. I guess he's still a YouTuber, a streamer, whatever you want to call him. He's a heat check guy. He has irrational confidence. He's also like not afraid to like just go off the chain at anything that happens. $4,800, I think, is a very reasonable price tag to pay for him. He's going to play around 25 minutes, and he's probably going to put up around 20 DraftKings points. What I like to see with his stats, though, and you can look in the the data at this, he plays more minutes and has more of a usage rate when he goes up against better competition. And I would describe this VCU team as better competition because they are the best team in the Atlantic 10 Conference. So I really do think KD Johnson, 4,800, is a guy who is going to make my player pool. I think he's a very solid value play here on this slate. Now, on the VCU side, you got Max Shulga, $8,100. Like I said, he was the best player from a DraftKings perspective in the first game against George Mason. He's a guy who can absolutely fill it up with peripheral stats. I really do like him, and I think the $8,100 is a reasonable price, even though the game environment is quite poor. But I do think he's a guy that can get there. Bamasil is a guy that I'm probably not playing. He's a very scoring-dependent player. He does not do as much in the peripherals as Shulga does. And honestly, I don't think he's that good of an offensive player. Like, when you watch VCU, like if you're rooting against VCU and he shoots, you're kind of like, okay, like you can have that. Like, I'm just not the highest on this guy. And maybe I'm crazy for that. Maybe I'm not. But he's a guy that I'm going to be fading in DFS. He is a high usage player. He can be a high shot volume player, but he doesn't give you as much outside of that as Shulga does. And he's not efficient at it as Shulga is. So he's going to be a pass for me. Jack Clark is third in DraftKings pricing. And look, he's about as consistent as they come. He's going to play over 30 minutes. He's a 3-and-D guy. He's going to get some boards. He's going to knock down a few threes. He can get you a few blocks and a few steals, but you never really get anything crazy out of Jack Clark. I think if you're playing cash games, I think he's a viable option, but I do think he lacks the upside for a tournament because he generally doesn't shoot the ball that much. He's just not a very high usage player offensively. He's kind of just a corner man. Now, Zeb Jackson is a guy who's kind of enigmatic. One thing I will kind of warn you about with Jackson, though, I think he got priced up after the Dayton game because he was chalk because Philip Russell was out and he played very well in that game. Since Philip Russell has been back, Zeb Jackson has not been over 19 DraftKings points, so he's going to be an easy fade for me. Luke Bamgoye, I believe is how it's pronounced, is their freshman starting center. He plays about half the game. Him and Christian Furman split minutes. Bam Goye is better. I don't know why he doesn't play more. And he is an elite shot blocker. I don't think he's a great individual defender, but he's a very good shot blocker, especially out of help. And so I think $4,400, you can get a guy who has a little bit of upside here. If he were to ever play more than 25 minutes, if Odom were to ever play him a lot, I do think he's a guy who could break a slate. So he's going to be in my player pool. I feel the same way about Philip Russell. He's back from his injury. He played 29 minutes against Loyola Chicago. If he was fully healthy for the whole season, he would not be down here at $4,100. So I'm kind of willing to buy that, he is right and he is okay. And I'm willing to take some shots on him at $4,100 here in this format. All right, now before we continue on with game number 3, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I am more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out to me on Twitter. I also tweet out a whole lot of updates for the show. If there's ever a slate where I don't have a show, I try to get out a Twitter thread or some data or some sort of opinions out there as well. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Y'all, I cannot recommend this enough. If you are looking for a community to be a part of where you can talk DFS, talk strategy, talk plays with a bunch of really smart, really good people, and then we'll kind of sweat it out and watch the games together and have a good laugh and have a good time, the Fantasy Corner Discord is the place for you. There's some people in there who are really in tune with lineup changes, injury changes, stats. Like, it's just a great place to be, and it's a great community to be a part of. We've had a lot of winners in the college basketball chat this season, and we're looking to make it more in the NCAA tournament. So I cannot recommend it enough. If you're looking for a community, join this one. And then if you want to know who actually makes all my DFS lineups, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. I put all of my core plays for every college basketball slate on there. So you will know who is in my DFS lineups, and you also know why, because I include a full article with it. So that would be, if you want to check that out, that would be the place to go. All right, let's go ahead and get on with game number 3, the American Athletic Championship game between 1-seeded Memphis, 3-seeded UAB. So KenPom has this one projected to be 85-78 in favor of Memphis. That is a 163-point total. That is the highest of the slate, a full 35 points higher than that George Mason VCU game. If you're looking to stack one game, this is going to be the game to stack. And I got to say, I think it's the easiest one to stack. And if you look at the 2 previous meetings that these teams have had, they were both high total games as well. Memphis won the season series. They won both games, 100-77, 177 total points scored in that one. The math was real easy. And then 88-81 was the second win, 169 total points scored in that one. Nice. And so really, you just got 2 high scoring games between these 2 teams. Both these teams get up and down. It just really looks like a great game environment to target for DFS purposes. Memphis ranks 28th in the nation in tempo. They're 41st in defensive efficiency, which is pretty good, but it's not even among like the top on this slate. Like literally it's below all 4 of the teams we've already talked about. Actually, it's literally 7th on the slate. I'm looking at it right now. It's literally 7th out of 8 teams on the slate. You'll never guess who 8 is. It's UAB. They rank 83rd in tempo, and they are 271st in defensive efficiency, by far the worst on the slate. UAB is a poor 3-point defense, and they don't force a lot of turnovers, which is good because Memphis tends to turn it over a lot. So you really do have an environment that's just going to lend itself to a lot of fantasy points being scored in this one. Now, on the UAB side, we got to talk about Yaxel, right? So I was talking about this in the Fantasy Corner Discord today. Postseason Yaxel is a thing. It's a thing. It absolutely is a thing. Last season, he absolutely dominated in the American Athletic Tournament on the way to UAB winning that tournament and on the way to, him punching a ticket to the NCAA. And he was great in that tournament last year. He's been great so far in this tournament. He had 87 DraftKings points against ECU. Yes, that is an absurd total, but that's the type of stat line he can put up. He is a great scorer, great rebounder, and he also will operate the offense and get you assists. He's a great block and steal guy as well. 87 57 is like a legitimate ceiling for him. And then in the game today against North Texas, terrible matchups. One of the slowest teams in the country still puts up 55 DraftKings points against them. Postseason Yaxel is a thing. He's only $9,600. He has the upside to break a slate. To me, he is the premier pay-up option on the slate. I do think he will be highly owned. I don't care. I'm going to be playing a lot of Yaxel. Now, the one concern, if you were a guy that's like, well, I like to fade chalk in DFS, but yet this seems like incredibly scary chalk to fade. Why would I want to fade this? Well, in the 2 games against Memphis, he has not been great. 23.5 in the home meeting against Memphis, and then only 44. Notice I said only 44 in the meeting away from home. And like, yeah, he's that good that I have to say only 44, right? So yeah, Yaxel's a guy that's absolutely going to make my player pool. And I'm probably going to be probably 60 to 70% of my lineups are going to have him. Now, I am probably full fading Christian Coleman. He is the partner in crime of Yaxel in the front court. He plays the 5 so that Yaxel can have a lot more freedom at the 4. He just isn't super consistent on DraftKings. And in the game against Memphis, he was great, 33 DraftKings points in the most recent one. But I'm just not a believer. I think if you're going to be playing Yaxel, you certainly don't want to be playing Coleman. If you're going to be fading Yaxel, I understand playing Coleman. And the only other forward that UAB plays is Bradley Ezewiro, who has been totally out of the rotation in the American Athletic Tournament. But if you're looking to fade Yaxel, maybe you hope Yaxel gets in foul trouble. Ezewiro would be a guy that would be on the floor in Yaxel's stead. Now, the guards for UAB, y'all, I can't ever figure it out. I just can't. Like, it's literally one of the hardest things to figure out, like, in all college basketball DFS for me, is which one of these guards is going to go off. Now, we do have good news. They have made it abundantly clear which ones of them are going to be on the floor. But from there, which one goes off is kind of up for debate. The ones that are going to be on the floor are Javory McGee, Alejandro Vasquez, and Tony. In the most recent game, you saw a lot of minutes for Ephraim Johnson because Alejandro Vasquez had some dumb first half fouls, very dumb first half fouls. But when he is out there, Alejandro Vasquez is the highest usage player of all these guards. He has the highest ceiling of all these guards, and he's a guy that I'm certainly going to get in my player pool and kind of hoping to buy the dip on. McGee is a guy who's coming into this game hot. He was great against North Texas. I know it's not in the DraftKings game log yet, but I believe he had about 30. He was great in that game. He's been great the last 5 games. I'm kind of willing to go back to him as well. I'm probably in a situation where I only want to play one of these UAB guards, though. Tony is the guy I do think you could pair with the others. He is much less dependent on scoring. He can be kind of a cardio guy, but he's going to play a ton of minutes, and I kind of like the concept of a guy playing a ton of minutes in a game environment that's going to be by far the best on the slate. Now, on the Memphis side, they have got the biggest piece of injury news on the slate. Tyrese Hunter got injured against Tulane and did not return in that game. I was watching that game. He came back with a boot on. Y'all, I am not a medical expert. I do not claim to be a medical expert. But generally speaking, if a guy has a boot on, they're not playing 35 minutes of basketball the next day. Certainly not 35 minutes of competitive Division I conference championship basketball. So I would tend to think that Hunter misses this game. And if he does, that elevates PJ Haggerty quite a lot. If Hunter misses, PJ Haggerty might take 25 shots in this game, which he did against Wichita, and he put up 64 DraftKings points. So I'm absolutely going back to Haggerty. Yes, he had a rough shooting day against Tulane, but to me, that just means he's due for regression, right? And he's going to take more shots if Tyrese Hunter is not healthy. So I really do like PJ Haggerty here at $9,000. The other beneficiaries at the guard spot, one of them would be Colby Rogers. Do not count out Colby Rogers. Yes, the last few days have been quite bad for him. I'm well aware because he's been in some of my lineups. But this is a guy who was the best player at Wichita State last season. He can be high usage, high profile guard when he wants to be. And against UAB in the previous meeting, he had 29 DraftKings points. So I'm willing to kind of buy in that Rogers might take a little bit of Hunter's role, might take a little bit of that usage, might take some more shots. $4,600, great price tag to pay for him with that. And the direct beneficiary of Tyrese Hunter's absence is going to be PJ Carter. He's going to play significantly more minutes if Hunter is out. He's the guy that came in today against Tulane, played 23 minutes, put up 16 DraftKings points. He is the premier punt play of the slate as long as Tyrese Hunter is out, which I do think he is going to be out. So I do think he's going to be popular. If you're looking to kind of play this to your advantage in DFS, I think that Carter is going to be really highly owned, and especially because of how cheap he is. And so Rogers might be a little bit of a leverage play if you're somebody who's looking to play that game. Now, the bigs for Memphis, I struggle to get right until I just said, you know what? Every time he's on a slate, I'm playing Dane Danger. And every now and then he's going to break a slate, which is what he's done twice out of the last 5 games. Against Tulane today, he played 38 minutes, put up 43 DraftKings points. And oh, by the way, the last game against UAB, 31 minutes, 45 DraftKings points. So the thing is with Dane Danger, I've mentioned this about a few guys this week. I feel like I'm a broken record saying this, but when you look at his time at Illinois and early season this year at Memphis, he was a great fantasy point per minute player. He was a supremely high usage player that did not play a lot of minutes. And then all of a sudden he started playing more and more minutes, and you just see the fantasy point total skyrocket because he still maintained that great per minute rate, just now at more minutes. And so to me, that makes him a still great play. $8,600 is very reasonable to pay. I do think with a lot of people looking to pay up to Lindeborg, a lot of people are not going to play Danger on the other side. So I think you might get a little bit of an ownership discount based off where he should be, but he's going to be a guy who's absolutely going to make my lineups. Now, the other two, I don't play as much. Jourdain has not been good so far in this conference tournament. He's only played 15 minutes in both games, largely because Musa Cease has been really good. Against Tulane today, he played 22 minutes, put up 34 DraftKings points. He's a guy who has the potential to nuke a slate. I just never know when it's going to be. If you want to take shots at Cease, I would, but my advice would be to not play Danger, Jourdain, or Cease together. Only play one of them because it's highly likely that one of the others is going to get in foul trouble. It's highly likely that if one of them is going off, the other two are probably not, because they're kind of similar players. So that would be my advice on the situation. But I really do like Danger. Like I said, this is the game overall where you're going to want to get a lot of exposure to, and there's guys at every price point that you can use to get exposure to this game. So it's certainly going to be a popular one, and I'm going to be playing it in many different ways. Now, last game of the day, the precursor to Selection Sunday, the selection show, is going to be Wisconsin taking on Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. This is going to be a good one, y'all. So I was really wanting Maryland to beat Michigan because I really thought a Wisconsin-Maryland game would be super interesting, because to me, those are two teams trending in the right direction. And then Michigan had to go and mess all that up with the full court at the end where Maryland did not stop the ball. I don't know what you're doing there. Like, yes, I understand you didn't get to set up your defense, but y'all, you got to stop the ball. Anyway, KenPom has this game, the one that we're, prognosticating about. KenPom has this one projected to be 78-74 in favor of Wisconsin. That is a 152-point total. That is the second best on the slate. This is a rematch where these two teams played back on December 3rd. Michigan won that game 67-64. That is a 131-point total. I believe that was the first game of Big Ten conference play. If it's not, then it was one of the first. And that was kind of the origin of the Michigan double big pick and roll with Wolf and Golden. Both of them were outstanding in that game. Both of them scored at least 20 points. And then that was also the origin of the Wisconsin two-guard domination of Tanjay and Blackwell. Both of them scored at least 16 points. But the supporting casts in either case, because of the game being such a low total, the supporting cast did not do a whole lot. So really, it was a game that was very heavily predicated on its stars. Now, from a statistical perspective, Wisconsin's a team that will get up and down a decent amount. They rank 148th in tempo, 32nd in defensive efficiency. They're generally a pretty good rim protection team, but they don't generate a whole lot of blocks or steals. Michigan is 61st in tempo. They rank 17th in defensive efficiency. They are generally a pretty good rim protection team as well, but they also have a high turnover rate. So with this being what it is statistically for Wisconsin, I think it's going to be another Tanjay and Blackwell day, right? Like, now in the Big Ten tournament so far, it's been Tanjay. He's played 3 straight days already in 33, 47, 46 DraftKings points. That's really good. That's just really good. And he's continuing to do it efficiently. He's shooting a high percentage from the field. He's rebounding the basketball as well. He's only $8,000. That to me just is way too low. I feel like he's more like a 9K player. And to me, this is a really solid play at $8,000. I don't think Michigan's guards are that good defensively. I really don't. Blackwell at $7,200. The usage is still there. He's not giving as much in the peripherals as he used to be. And he's not playing as many minutes as he used to be. I don't know why the recent dip in minutes. Maybe they're just saving him for this last game, because if he does play 35 minutes with this usage rate and he does get back to his normal peripheral self, he could absolutely give a good game at $7,200. I feel like after the last 3 days, everybody's going to be on Tanjay. Nobody's going to be on Blackwell. So if you're looking to play the leverage game, that would be another way to do so. And then for the rest of the Wisconsin guards, Kamari McGee has been filling in quite admirably for Max Klesmit while he was hurt. And he's kind of, I don't want to say kept the role fully, but he's kind of increased his minute total from where it was at. It's not where it was at for the games that Klesmit was hurt, but it's higher than it was before. He's only $4,000. I kind of don't mind it, but I would rather just go play Klesmit at $3,700. He is still ramping up after injury. This is a guy who does make a difference for this Wisconsin team, whether he's healthy or not. And this is the cheapest he's been all season. With a lot of people looking to play PJ Carter, I think that Klesmit will not be a chalk 3K play. And so I think that would be a way you could get to him. And I think that it's probably worth a look. Now, Steven Crowell and Nolan Winter are the normal starting two bigs, but y'all, this is not like, I don't think you want to play most bigs against Michigan. I played Derek Queen against them today because Derek Queen's a different type of big. Crowell and Winter, I think, just kind of play into the advantages of what Michigan's bigs do. And today, Nolan Winter was not good. He had 4 fouls in 12 minutes, only 8 DraftKings points. So Crowell and Winter, I'm probably avoiding on this slate. Carter Gilmore, he was a beneficiary of the foul trouble of Nolan Winter today, 32 DraftKings points out of nowhere. Don't chase that. Don't chase that. It's a bad matchup, and he's not guaranteed those minutes because he's not guaranteed to get the Nolan Winter foul trouble again. On the Michigan side, they continue to run everything through Wolf and Golden, and both of them continue to be very good options in DraftKings. Danny Wolf, 4 straight games of 44 DraftKings points. The usage has been incredible. It's been a double-double every game. He's playing nearly every minute. Like, he just checks a lot of boxes, and we know that he can do it against this Wisconsin team because he did in December for 52 DraftKings points. Now, the downside is Wisconsin's going to adjust. Wisconsin's going to do something to take that big pick and roll away. They're not just going to let Michigan do the same thing over again on him. So I do think that might have me a little bit leery of playing Wolf. Same deal with Vlad Golden. Much like Wolf, he's been great lately. The usage has been great. The rebounding's been great. He's playing a ton of minutes, and he was great against Wisconsin in that first meeting, 38 DraftKings points. But I do think Wisconsin's going to change up the strategy. I think they're going to make somebody else beat them. And oh, by the way, if there is going to be somebody else that beats them, it will be Trey Donaldson. That was the case against Maryland today. Trey Donaldson was great in that game, 31 DraftKings points, super high assist rate, 9 assists in that game. So, if Wisconsin does make somebody else beat them, Trey Donaldson will be the guy. And so Trey Donaldson will probably be the guy that I have the most exposure to out of this Michigan team. Reuben Jones was really good today. And he still only put up 9 DraftKings points. Like, he played a ton of minutes. Seemed like he was really good at the start of the game and still only put up 9 DraftKings points. Probably not playing him. Namari Burnett has just kind of been a cardio guy recently. Not really into playing him. Will Shetter, you would need foul trouble from Wolf or Golden for him to get in. And then Roddy Gale is super enigmatic. I'm kind of willing to give him a shot because, again, following along this same trend, if Wisconsin is going to make Michigan adjust, if they're going to make somebody else score the basketball other than Wolf and Golden, Roddy Gale is a guy that can do that. And Roddy Gale, when he was at Ohio State, was a much more high usage player, much more high minute player than he is right now. $3,900 is a reasonable price to pay for a guy that has that kind of ceiling in my book. But all right, y'all, that is going to do it for all 4 of the Selection Sunday games. Hopefully we gave you guys plenty of good information that you can use to build some winning DraftKings lineups. Remember, if you do want more from me, follow me on Twitter, join the Fantasy Corner Discord, check out the core plays on the Patreon, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel on YouTube so that way you can be with us for the rest of all of our March Madness content, the bracket breakdown show, the DFS shows, the live drafts on Underdog. You're going to want to be a part of all of it. So if you're subscribed to the channel, you will get notified when all those drop, and you'll just be able to be there with us as we go through the best time of the year, in my opinion. So if this video helped you out in any way, please make sure you hit the like button on YouTube. Y'all, we can't increase that subscriber count without your help. Please help me out with this. I really do appreciate it. I cannot stress enough how much the likes on the video help. And if you're listening on audio, the rates and reviews help me out a ton as well. But anyway, that's going to do it for this show, y'all. So the next time I talk to you guys, we'll have a bracket. It's super exciting. I cannot wait. Very much looking forward to it. Best of luck to you guys on this 4-game Sunday slate. Hopefully you guys are able to make some winning lineups. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and I will see you guys next time.